People who nearly die often come back changed. Not in the way you'd expect. They don't come back terrified. They don't come back clinging harder to the things they had. They come back quieter. They stop caring about the promotion. They stop caring about being right in the argument. They stop caring about what people think of them at the dinner table. And here's what makes that so strange. Nobody taught them to do that. No therapist, no book, no retreat. Just almost dying. In 1975, a psychiatrist named Raymond Moody interviewed 150 people who had been clinically dead and then brought back. He expected to find trauma, chaos, fear. What he found instead blew the entire field of psychology open. Almost every single one of them reported the same shift. Not visions of heaven, not angels. A change in what they cared about. Today, we're going to go inside that shift. What actually happens to a person when they face death? Why it changes their values so completely? And this is the part that surprised me most, what you and I can actually learn from it, without having to die first. Let me tell you about a man named David. David was 58 years old. He ran a small accounting firm. He worked 60 hours a week. His phone never left his hand. He was the kind of man who answered emails at 11 p.m. and felt guilty if he didn't. He missed his daughter's school play. Twice. He told himself he'd make it up to her later. There was always a later. One Tuesday evening in November, David had a massive heart attack in his office. His assistant found him on the floor between his desk and the filing cabinet. The paramedics worked on him for 11 minutes before they got a pulse back. 11 minutes. When David woke up 3 days later in the ICU, his daughter was sitting beside the bed holding his hand. And something in him was different. He told his doctor, "While I was out, I wasn't thinking about the firm. Not once. I kept seeing her face. Just her face." Now here's what the science says about why that happened. And I want you to really hear this, because it flips the way most of us think about values. For decades, psychologists assumed that our values were pretty fixed by adulthood. You become who you are. You want what you want. Change is slow. Change is hard. But NDE research, near-death experience research, breaks that assumption completely. Here's what multiple independent studies found. People who had near-death experiences consistently reported, after the experience, lower interest in material success, lower fear of death, lower need for social approval, and dramatically higher interest in loving relationships, personal meaning, being present. Now you might think, okay, that makes sense. You almost die, you appreciate life more. Basic psychology. But here's the twist that nobody talks about. These changes weren't gradual. They weren't the result of months of therapy or reflection. They happened almost immediately. Within days of the experience, people reported feeling fundamentally different, as if someone had reached inside them and quietly reorganized their priorities. Not replaced them, reorganized them. A researcher named Kenneth Ring, he spent 30 years studying this. He described it as a value shift at the core level. Not surface-level change, like deciding to eat healthier or call your mom more often, but the deepest layer of what a person believes matters. And here's the part that stopped me cold when I read it. Ring found that people who studied NDE accounts, people who read about near-death experiences but never had one, showed some of the same shifts. Smaller, slower, but measurable. Which means something about encountering this idea, really encountering it, can touch something in us, even secondhand. So why does this happen? What is the mechanism? Because it's not magic. There's a real psychological process underneath this, and I want to walk you through it carefully, because understanding why is what makes it usable. When we go through ordinary life, there's a voice in our head that's always running. Am I doing enough? Do they respect me? What will people think? Is this the right decision? Am I falling behind? Psychologists call this the ego narrative, the story we tell ourselves about who we are and how we're doing. It requires enormous energy to maintain. We protect it. We feed it. We make decisions every single day to keep that story intact. Now, when death suddenly becomes real, not abstract, not someday, but right now, today, that entire mechanism shuts off. Because the ego's job is to manage your future, your reputation, your goals, your social standing. But when there's no future, even just for a moment, the ego has nothing left to protect. And in that silence, something else becomes visible. Something that was always there, underneath all the noise. Researchers call it core consciousness. The part of you that exists before the roles, before the job title, before the achievements, before the opinions. Just awareness. And what that awareness cares about is completely different from what the ego cares about. It cares about connection. It cares about presence. It cares about love. Not the sentimental kind, but the quiet, steady kind. David, our accountant from earlier, after he recovered, he sold 40% of the firm. He didn't quit. He didn't become a monk. He just adjusted the ratio. He started coaching his daughter's soccer team on Saturday mornings. He started eating dinner with his wife without his phone on the table. He said later, "I didn't change what I do. I changed what I'm doing it for." That's the ego dissolve in action. Not destruction, reorganization. Here's where this gets really interesting and a little uncomfortable. Most of us have spent our lives believing that achievement is the path to meaning. Work hard, build something, prove yourself. Then you'll feel okay. NDE survivors almost universally report the opposite. Not that achievement is wrong, but that chasing achievement as a source of self-worth, that specific thing, is what drains life of presence. Think about the last time you felt genuinely at peace. Was it when you finished a project? Maybe, for a few minutes. Or was it something quieter? A conversation that went deeper than you expected? A morning where nothing demanded anything from you? A moment where you were just here. Near-death survivors describe this realization arriving like a tide going out. All the anxiety about status and performance just receding. And what's left on the shore is surprisingly simple. Did I love well? Was I present for the people who needed me? Did I experience my own life, or did I spend it preparing for a life I never quite got to? One survivor said something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. Her name was Anita Morjani. She had stage 4 cancer, fell into a coma, and was given hours to live. She described the NDE as moving into a state of total clarity, where she could see her life from the outside. And the thing she saw, the thing that shocked her, was how much energy she had spent being afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough, afraid of what people thought. She said, "I realized that my life's purpose was simply to be myself, fully, without apology." She recovered. Doctors called it medically unexplainable. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to believe about what happens after death. That's not the point of this conversation. The point is this: whether or not you believe in anything beyond this life, the psychological shift these people experience is real. It's documented, it's consistent, and it points to something about the human mind that we can take seriously right now. So here's where we land. You don't need a near-death experience to start living like someone who's had one, but you do need to be intentional. Because the default setting of modern life is exactly the opposite direction. The default is more urgency, more noise, more comparison, more striving. So let me give you 3 things. Not a 30-day plan, not a system, just 3 orientations that NDE survivors consistently point toward. The first one, practice seeing the end. Not morbidly, not anxiously, but clearly. There's an old meditation practice in multiple traditions called memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not to frighten you, but to focus you. When you make a decision today about how to spend your afternoon, about whether to have that conversation, about whether to forgive someone who hurt you, ask, if I knew I had 6 months left, would this still matter? Sometimes the answer is yes. Do it anyway and do it fully. Sometimes the answer is no, and that's important information. The second one, audit your energy. NDE survivors don't become passive, they become selective. They stop spending energy on things that feed the ego and start spending it on things that feed the soul. The difference is simple to identify, though not always easy to act on. Ego feeding, doing things to be seen, approved of, or ahead of someone else. Soul feeding, doing things because they're true, meaningful, or loving. Both can look the same from the outside. The difference is internal. Ask yourself once a week, what am I doing to be seen, and what am I doing because it matters? You don't have to change everything immediately. Just see it clearly. Clarity is always the first step. The third one, return to the body. This is the most practical one. NDE survivors consistently describe presence as physical. Coming back to the sensations of being alive, breathing, warmth, touch, the weight of their own hands. When the mind is running its ego narrative, it's almost never in the body. It's in the future, or the past, or someone else's opinion of you. The body is always in the present. So the simplest practice is this. Once a day, just stop. Sit somewhere quiet for 5 minutes. Feel your breath. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Don't try to think less, just feel more. It sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but the people who've been closest to death say this kind of presence is the whole thing. Not a technique to master, the destination itself. David, our accountant, 3 years after his heart attack, I want to tell you how he ended the interview he gave to a local paper. The journalist asked him, "What do you want people to know from your experience?" He paused for a long time. Then he said, "I want them to know that what you're looking for, that feeling of being enough, it was never in the next thing. It was always already here. I just had to nearly leave to see it." You don't have to nearly leave, but you do have to choose to look. That's what the near-death experience does for people. Not some mystical event, not a miracle. It simply forces them to look at what was already there. You can do that now, without the emergency, without the hospital room, without the 11 minutes on the floor. Just look. If this reached you today, not just intellectually, But somewhere underneath that, I want to ask you to do one thing. Don't just watch another video. Take 2 minutes. Right now or tonight before you sleep. Sit somewhere quiet. Ask yourself one question and let it stay there. What am I living for? And is that still true? You don't need to answer it perfectly. You just need to ask it honestly. Because that question, the way it sits in you, that's the beginning of the shift. If this video found you at the right moment, subscribe so the next one finds you too. And if someone in your life is running hard, too hard, for too long, share this with them. Not to tell them something, just to offer them a quiet moment. That's all any of us really need.